Aloha and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about counting, and specifically, we're going to be talking about counting with a while loop. So let me go ahead and share my screen and pull up Visual Studio Code, and let's take a look. So the first thing that we're going to do counting with a while loop is we're going to take a look at looping over a loop structure for about n number of times. And one of the most important things to remember in this is you always want to initialize your loop variable, and you always want to make sure that inside the loop you are incrementing or decrementing it. You're doing something to make this while statement actually happen. So right here, we're starting out with I equals 1, and we're going to say that while I is less than or equal to 5, we're going to print I, then we're going to add 1 to it. So eventually, we're going to start with 1. We're going to go I equals 1. We'll run through it. We'll print 1. Then we'll say I is 2. It's still less than or equal to 5, so we're going to print 2. Then 3 is less than 5. We're going to print 3. Then 4, we're going to print it because it's less than or equal to. And then we're going to hit 5. And we'll see that that is the last number that prints. But the big thing to remember is right here, I plus equals 1, I equals I plus 1. Essentially, if you don't get that right, you're going to get into an infinite loop, and that's not going to be pretty. So try to avoid that. In here, I think for the most part, we're going to be safe if we get into an infinite loop. But if you do it on some things like if you're running code in a browser or something like that, often you can get unresponsive behavior from your computer. So you want to remember always to make sure that this loop will exit. And this is one reason why I really don't like using while loops, just because you have the potential to shoot yourself in the foot like this. So if we were to go ahead and run this, let's go up here and click on the play button, and we'll see that indeed it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this isn't the only direction that you can do your counting. You can also go over here and let's take a look at the next block. Over here, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to start at 5, and we're going to say that while I is greater than or equal to 0, we're going to print that, and we're going to then decrement it. We're going to go I equals I minus 1. So what do you expect to happen here? We're going to go through as 5. We're going to say, is 5 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. We'll print 5. Then we'll subtract 1. We'll get 4. Is 4 greater than 0? Yes, print it. Is 3? Yes, print it. Is 2? Yes, print it. Is 1? Yes, print it. Is 0? So yes, 0 is greater than or equal to 0. So we'll print that. Then when we hit -1, we'll finally exit out from our loop, and we'll continue to the next line below it. So let's go ahead and see if I'm lying. So we hit the print or the play button, and sure enough, we start at 5 and we go all the way down to 0. So another thing, you don't have to go entirely by ones here. You can actually count down or count up by multiples. So let's say we start at 100, and we're going to say as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, we're going to print it. Then we're going to minus 5. So we'll start at 100. Is it greater than 0? Yes, print 100. Then we'll subtract 5, we'll get 95. Is it, and we'll keep on going down and down, down till we hit 0. So let's take a look at this. And sure enough, if you scroll up, we started at 100 and we went down to 95. So all the way down, then we hit 0, and that's at the point that we exit, because after that is -5, and that is not greater than or equal to 0. So you can do it any number here. You can do this by tens. Oops, 510 would not be good. But if we did it by tens, we go in here and we'd see that it does, 190, 80, 70, 60, 50, all the way down to 0. You can do any number, really. The important thing to remember not to do, though, is if we're going to do something like this, make sure that you always catch it right here. If you say greater than or equal to, if you have a relational operator like that, it's great. But if you say equal to 0, and you do something like this, and then you're decrementing by 13, you can blow by it. You will blow by it, and you'll never hit 0. And then you'll get in that infinite loop that we talked about. So you always want to make sure that no matter what happens, you will get to the case where your sentinel value will be found, and it'll knock out of this loop, and it'll go to the next line. Otherwise, we're in for a long, long day. So one exception to that may be in a situation where you want to run a loop that runs forever, where you're just getting numbers from a user. And in a case like that, you can put in a condition there that will never evaluate to true, it'll stay in an infinite loop. But what you're going to be doing here is like asking for an input and then calculating something off of it and then asking for an input. If you're constantly wanting input from a user, that's a perfect valid reason to put yourself into an infinite loop. But in general, you don't want to be doing things like that. So, oh, I just thought of another example. Let's say that you're running a Python program that is querying a temperature sensor and you want it to keep on going. You can set that loop up so that every minute or so, it's going to check the sensor, get the information and print it out. Maybe in a situation like that, you'll want an infinite loop. But infinite loops are something in general you do not want to come across. You don't want to accidentally introduce it into your code because, yeah, things will start running erratically at that point. So that's the lesson. Hang on, and we'll see you in the next lesson.